Dear Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, as presidents slash chiefs, former and present, and through President Trump, through your former term, you were lied to by the intelligence agency, increasingly recording, confessing, demonstrating themselves, involved with wire crime acts and methods, where they just faked the wire crime and changed the wire communications. They, as collusions with whole fake transcripts. A bunch of people at Harvard Hospital are leaking with the FBI to an extent they know this is at least plausible, and where and how they're playing games, preventing us from getting a response. Judge Napolitano, I hope you could hear this, because Fox Connecticut News will not respond to me. They have people on off the state judicial branch offices and on off the state corrections offices that are increasingly collusion slash S at all natures of crime scenes and next to them, including next to body dumping spots, even if they're made up. They've been using the rights to lie where they don't have the right to lie, including with the news that has had maintained self-value with that, pretending they don't realize roles with all kinds of natures of communications, racketeering, worse than war crimes, and violence, and pretending to be against such. They have violence with the interbranch refusing to get on paper with a whole bunch of foreign and domestic criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists too. People with the name Scalora involved with Central Connecticut State University, New Britain, Connecticut, with the family of a Dean Judd, involved with intelligence families at Harvard Hospital and UConn, like with the name Violet and Klovinskis, all along Route 175, of people with the name Dennis, involved with a bunch of people tied to former mayors, like a Gold family, and a woman named Ruth, reportedly the wife of a retired mayor, involved also with the Saudi attackers, the ones involved with it that didn't even know. Because this is also where you guys don't even know. You guys have self-value roles where the individuals are self-value roles hurting you guys, or you guys are simultaneous. The difference of that too was his roles self-valued by all sides. When there are exceptions, you guys, you know, you're valuing what's in databases as styles of logic, natures of logic that can't be defended in American history taught properly. James Madison, and the founders behind him and his plan. I read that we were supposed to refer to our founders plural as James Madison singular, and then they went with his plan and that extent of power and might that they could only have through it, where they had no means otherwise. Same way no one had means. That's why they had to leave slavery entrenched overtly against everyone, but also sickly distinctly, so everyone would not say that, would not notice how non-distinctly. Or if and when everyone said, hey, look, we're all hurt by the same thing, a breaching method, that body would be sensed, including if that body was a majority of people, including if it was everyone. And now as a phenomenon of a country that could only be operated by the voices of individuals at locations, areas, and states. And no group thinks. It groups of tactical ulterior from nature's grouping. Its uses of that of the value of group differences rather than finite individual or simultaneous species, which is also finite individual body, a human species body of individual bodies, with all group differences being generated by that which demonstrates this. Also, as does that who denies it and tries to posit other being more probable to describe where and how everything is manifest and where it came from. It comes with demonstration slash S with the same thing. And the way it is manifest as a singular body discernible, it is discernible that there is one identity, a value progression that is not our species body, is not the other species body. Fish did not invent how all the different species bodies have two eyes. Therefore, even how the parts where they invented that themselves about themselves That's demonstration slash ethic becomes as demonstrations of the same thing. And about how nature uses exception nature in ways that we could use to discern not just the difference between what's a truth or a lie, where the difference of that too, because there are truths that are used for lies, truths to screen lies. You guys have locations, areas, and states forcing you know that people are using criminally insidiousness natures of truths upon you guys to force equality of fact treatment. Every leader, not just you guys. They're above locations, areas, any grouping of countries. This breaching method knew they would be entertaining locations, areas, and states. The names of people, scientists further already having been self-valued roles, right? We're knowing self-values. Roles with what it keeps to keep other things, others, ourselves blamed for what nature demonstrates about itself. Nature demonstrates to us a human fact treating nature breaching method is one of the things that through all ways those laws were entrenched as. And regarding which trials are about, which trials are inseparable to interpret that legitimately as science / science is. Which trials you don't leave out, how there were crazy slavery laws and how sickly distinctly, but sickly non-distinctly against everyone, northern colonies and southern colonies, and then America's founders were born. And then that plan was born to counter, extort, and force the other third of our founders. As the other colonists and as the other Native Americans see president / chief. Nature itself shows us that Native Americans are 3/3 of our founders. And like individually, automatically by nature, they are a part of our founding per our founding, president / chief, and per James Madison's plan, and how it tells us to refer to our founders plural as him singular, which is also Native Americans grouped with the colonists who want to defend the hyper-native pure, that on a constitution unabridged, and why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them, especially differentially. If we are Native American, which I am not official Native American, but I am a human species body of individual body, so I appreciate their difference as my own. In other words, not to discern, not to look away from how the breaching method used their difference and every other difference. We have black pupils, whites of eyes that are the same color eyes with different color eyes at the same time, with that body of hyper-simultaneous, distinct identity of simultaneous nature, is showing us about difference, about exception nature, about a special difference too. Earth has a special difference. The reasons even like we're going to space, we must not forget where, how, and why. We have means. We're supposed to understand we have replaced what we would have and do and could understand. But inside this, we have entertained, but can't express it properly while entertaining that. Things are pretended debatable that are not. And that is gotten away with, and it's recorded how, per a breaching method that we have to address. We have black people's whites of eyes that is inseparable as one of the proofs, generating other proofs that there was a breaching method that reassigned what nature's communications to us and what we are capable of understanding and what we are obligated to communicate and speak actually at each age of fact treating nature. There are people on off the Connecticut judicial branch offices with some black themed, I refer to it as themed, because of their educators and the people with the courts involved with some black themed, KKK themed, Confederate flag themed putting fake things in databases with sexual and medical offenders of kids, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, not legitimately, with the foreign and domestic military and stuff, all that on Hartford Hospital, and next to it, with the Demorest Market, Ilo's Kitchen, and my own family increasingly involved with former mayors, also with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people who are Los Solitos themed, people who are Afghan themed. There's an officer they say is named. He won't even. And then they want to have me. All of a sudden, they're going to have a trial that right where the first person goes in there. There's no one else in the court. There's an officer Hunter involved with Emily or Amy, with former director of the FBI and with various Hartford courts and the Britain Superior Court after the World Trade Center attack, who are also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with all kinds of natures of organized federal evidences crimes and child abuses and predicate acts, identity thefts and frauds instances, roles with criminally foreign influence uses / uses of all natures of investigators. There are leasing agents, plural, not just the farmer, but the one with Lucinda Alderuccio. I don't think is her last name. Arcilla, sorry if it's not. But Lucinda associated with Justin Kovinsky. They tried to make one quick exception right in high school, at the end of high school. It wasn't even my grade. I never saw him or her around school. So I'm one quick second there. That recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed increasingly people from my grammar school that I don't even know them. They're acting having been influenced by magic tricks, like literally lies about other people with various natures of federal criminals and co-defendants of some of them as co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and their neighbors and their family members are with the branches of government, like a whole bunch of probate court judges are with a whole bunch of people from other areas involved with planting evidences on my street rolls with methods of it recorded. People are saying, oh, I don't see evidences. And they record the breaching method already showed them they recorded doing that consciously, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and as collusion /S. Sandy Hook campuses have people named Cololo and have a Phil Cololo also with a Whiting forensics since I was a kid. And there are proofs since before everyone was alive. Central Connecticut State University and all the colleges have connections, including fire campuses and medical campuses. Increasingly, intelligence families like named Walters and Jensen are at and next to Harvard Hospital with a whole bunch of different countries, names at those other countries and names with the bordering states, where they come back, and they had live progressions too with people that don't even realize, because of how they have the differences of their own differences and other people's differences interbranch, like New Britain Superior Court has all kinds of differences, rackets distinctly from the other courts, and where they have things like racism blamed for where our founders communicated for us to understand how the breaching method forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded things like racism to be blamed instead of itself, instead of the predicate acts with facts. When there are problems between people, we need to, in other words, if there's someone increasingly harassing someone else, they have to put that on paper. You know, as the act. In other words, if they do that and they say, "Oh, well, this happened first," then let them do that. Oh, but then they're going to get away. Of course, they're going to get away because increasingly those courts are increasingly involved with predicate acts at the campuses. That's one of the reasons why and how they could have gotten away with it so long, as we could observe too. Replacing and valuing having been replaced. The breaching method, right from the scientific value of the breaching method, replaced right from the communications of our founders. Nature, and they declassified enough for us to know they declassified that and how they did not have free speech and how they had to pretend to otherwise be sensed. Facebook has recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed their influence to replace the word free speech with freedom of expression because of their roles with the FBI and with other agencies and countries and their family members at corners of streets and on off campuses, replacing and changing digital evidences as predicate acts with facts, methods / S roles as the hyper evidential, just as having black people's rights of eyes. In other words, and worse than criminal incompetence have been the parties, the individual voice. I understand, you guys a lot of ways do better than I would do, but I'm saying we have to free the individual. Only an individual voice can defend the order of the finite, and the difference of that, where the difference of that to us is evolved. Whoever tries to deny that and how having black people's rights of eyes should be inseparable from the subjects as critical as slavery. It's involved with the human fact, human nature breaching method. Worse than war crimes. See, the military, they want to use their knowledge of good and evil and make everything a competition dishonestly for the breaching method. Because this is principally, if you can't understand that having black people's rights of eyes and having had those laws designed the way they were is about a predicate acts with facts method and or a criminal incestuous nature method and or the difference of that entrenchment method, exploitation method, entrenched. Anyone who tries to deny that it was about that will have inherent to active to and progressive to demonstrations of the same thing. That's why that's relative to it's manifest that there are collusions that interbranch have had at all natures of crime scenes, including with their kids. This is relative to where and to how too. Anyone could pretend that anyone was honest about our means and what we actually want and need and could afford, like that for the elderly homes, plural, every single one of the elderly homes, and the kids. In other words, clearer than day, the adults of New York City, sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly at all locations / S. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born for torture, extortion, slavery method. Anyone who debates that will have inherent to active to progressive to their logic and their nature of the logic. Demonstration of the same thing / S and or collusion / S relative. But so that's why we have to have mandated law followed when there are differences between people. But they won't follow mandated law. They're using wire and mail crime methods. And like they already put me to fake and changed writing. So now they need to have other writing because they go and make it, I didn't understand. They pretend not to understand. They're refusing to identify themselves as times collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and people involved with violence threats that are not police forms, mixed with the police forms that are refusing to identify themselves, who are making confessions and demonstrations of their roles with other houses and names in my area, who also people tied to them have been. And as their roles with the violence and threats and the interbranch forging and switching names with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, and child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, where they have roles with their kids, families, forcing it. That's one of the reasons they're not supposed to fake and change things and pretend they're emotions. Emotions are about the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous. Otherwise, we have means to discern. When they have asked questions at locations, areas, and states of the body, of the human species, like with there are formal law locations, they're forcing short words that they can't afford to be proper. In other words, and they're forcing it to be short, where there's a list of reasons. There are reasons that we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. They can't afford due process. They have due process influenced by their roles with all kinds of natures of organized crimes, with medicines, with everything every instance that came and crime scene that came before them from those locations, and with influences tied to a phenomenon easier than day. This breaching method uses the identities of difference, including the differences of the three branches of government. And obviously, there are family members that have other family members in this branch. These branches never had the, the ability to appreciate properly why they're supposed to be separate but equal. Everything, you guys have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes only at countries A through Z, and causing chaos specifically to have other things, others themselves, besides the breaching method blamed. Otherwise, that body would be sentenced. And it's adapted to, including if it is a majority of people, including if there's a whole country at the same time. Any grouping of countries entertaining these suits and ties, counters, and exceptions, even with the nature of debate regarding that, it's inseparable how the suburbs were designed. It's not even debatable that the only reason they get away with debating that the suburbs were designed to cause negative value in nature, progressions, acts, and natures by a torture, extortion, and slavery method is by self-valuing the campuses as being and having been taught criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions raw from off that by a method that knew that nature itself would put demonstrations of that, and that it had a method that keeps roles with it in such ways that it can't afford those roles and names and people tied in natures of conjunctions to them to afford to have the free speech as actually liberated. It needs to pretend other, it needs to be pretending for free speech. New Britain Superior Court has people involved with Facebook. There's also one that looks just like a Celeste Wells. I only saw her real quick one time, and I saw her in a book. She has something to do with people involved with making a yearbook of my at my campus. It was other campuses too, though. But these are people on off the state corrections offices, on off the state judicial branch offices, who have been putting fake things in databases and putting collusions with the differences of the teachers or adults rather, or kids. These are also roles with the worst uses of overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And their roles with there's an officer Hunter per Hartford courts. And there's that and people associated with them like Amy or Emily on New Britain Avenue, New Park Avenue in Hartford, Connecticut. She's involved with the Eric Burgess, involved with a Dean Judd and his family members in a whole bunch of different countries, and people next to the spot of a serial killer, involved with Justin Klovinskis and his wife named Lucinda with the leasing agents and foreign and domestic military, and people from Yukon named Violet and tied to them, and through time, involved also with the name Zeno. A Zeno and a John Maiano sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm after a Ray Clough who moved into my grade and on my street when I was in fourth grade. I never had a class with him in that grammar school or before that. I never saw him around before that. He has roles with the O'Brien family that was already here, with multiple police departments increasingly involved, with a whole bunch of people tied to them, with a whole bunch of wire crime acts and methods, and falsified police report role collusion /S that were timed with a whole bunch of other countries. There are roles there are people with Korea tied to Kevin Harris, and his mother is involved with counselors and with prosecutors and with what do they call it? Psychiatrists, involved also personally and professionally with judges and prosecutors, putting fake and changed evidences, identity theft, fraud, slaves, whole fake transcripts, roles, collusion /S, forging doctors' names, and putting fake transcripts, fake conversations with them, and then putting people fake conversations with themselves too. Hold just transcripts, and then using that and having used that as collusion /S with all natures of investigators. So they're keeping. So they have the Hartford, Connecticut was designed as a suburban /urban, many ways by the breaching method that designed the suburbs, in it to unfold that way, where they would replace the houses that are the same distance apart, basically, as the suburbs. But then they make them 2-family and 3-family houses. Now, there's a nature of communications, but there's a quality of fact treatment nature, where details are forbid. If you were in an apartment, for example, details are forbid in the nature of the communications, many ways. Otherwise, you can start fighting about details too much. And where and how this is manifest, where people are directed not to give up their sources and methods, they confess it. In other words, they value it to pretend they didn't realize. New Britain Superior Court has a Brian Silver. It has judges, like a Judge Smith, and they have female judges and other male judges involved with the FBI and people with Harper Courts too, with Eric Burgess and with the FBI director and his co-defendants and all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions and their neighbors as ones involved next to at spots next to West Farms Mall. There are proofs with the security at West Farms Mall too. Ray Clough and Joe DeMauro said that there's a Doobie family involved with them, with their roles with the police. That asked me to pay conversations with them at the police station when I was a kid and then as an adult, as their roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, per John DeMauro, per Joe DeMauro, etc. Also, adults and kids at and next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, them involved with Detective Samuda, also with sexual and medical abuses of little kids, and then of them as women too at the campus. Central Connecticut State University has something to do with foreign and domestic intelligence and their conversations and uses of the syntax of people on Church Street in Old Weathersfield, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, mail crimes, wire crimes, and with the houses and businesses next to Hartford Hospital, and with various courts, all sides of criminal and civil cases in the courts' names and the police forms. They're putting the same sequence shifts, etc., while covering up this. So they pretended they were valuable. And then they're going to put people in jail for all these years as Americans, and they want to counter. The news is only going to help the foreign people that are in this country illegally, because the interbranch use their own differences as a certain type of victim / hyper victim. And then there's as collusion / S. And then there's the nature of people that you try to point out an exception for a president, regardless if it's Democrat, but that difference too. How can anyone appreciate properly the difference between Republican and Democrat until we get how the breaching method uses differences rackets, uses measure to maintain self-value roles, communicating other than how nature communicates with difference. It is showing us its difference, the difference of how we have distinct from the fish eyes, but also non-distinct and simultaneous, but also per that further hyper-simultaneous, a distinct identity / hyper-simultaneous, because nature also shows us it is functional, being and having been hyper-invisible, but still discernible. Oh, why don't you write this down? Because then you have to go communicate with someone. The most imprintable thing, every campus I went to, people have been planting evidences on all sides of my house rolls with the same names involved, ones with home break-ins, as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack. You guys have been preventing me a voice since before the World Trade Center attack. Humanity. I mean, a bunch of people, all kinds of things. I shouldn't have to beg to get them on paper, one name and sequence. The Britain Superior Court recorded, confessed before it happened. They have rape threats and people involved with a Joshua Julian, people with the name KNERR, with the Britain Superior Court's Facebook page. Then they made a whole bunch of other Facebook pages. And that was people with the FBI director and the intelligence, having people fake passions and emotions because they're involved with behavior racketeering. They've been saying things timing things to acting so other people go look. So they keep all sides of cases in the courts, in the police forms, and their sources, mayors, their family members, conjunctions to them. At the same time, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones need to self-value the same sequence shifts. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them and with others about the World Trade Center attack. That wasn't by accident. They're recording and confessing, demonstrating, and confirming they have intelligence next to them, increasingly involved with them, intercities. Also with the sources of the WTNH along Route 175 from the founding locations and its conjunctions. As where they accepted too as exceptions, it is recorded. They're like, Chris Walters sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. Mark Violet, Paul Kelly. I don't know Paul Kelly. He sought me out to have his picture taken near me, apparently, or whatever. I don't know if in other words, his neighbors, I don't know their names. They know my name. They've been planting evidences with WTNH at corners of streets, including next to this campus, of a principal upskirt nature, involved with more sexual and medical offenders of kids there who are also personally and professionally involved with probation officers, but also with prosecutors and judges and their family members at the same time involved. Now, these are people are going to go pretend things are serious with little crimes that they're framing that too. They're going to change and fake. They're only capable of it. They're going to use every instance that comes before them to pretend they could speak for integrity. Forgiveness is so we get the mandated law. We don't change and fake what people say when we ask to get them into branch on paper. Please, President Trump, right through your administration, right through the Obama administration, they lied to you. Please get them on paper, one name and sequence. Sandy Hook campuses are increasingly leaking too. They have roles with Sandy Hook promises too, with people pretending to be against gun crimes too. They're like, in other words, with the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices have roles with gun crimes, poisons crimes, weapons crimes, and verbal threats, and changing and faking what's recorded at campuses, filmed 24/7. So all should fear God to hide and plot. I'll wrap a lot. Don't take me up, please. Get me heard, presidents, and I'll help you when they try to make attack when it hurts you, because they hurt the presidents if they don't entertain the differences of Republican and of Democrat. Like Connecticut has roles of all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, like with their law syntax. They have all these synthetic drugs and things that are wicked powerful. Then if some kid takes it, just try one pop, the kid will fall on the ground and he's like incapacitated for a certain time. And they have that before and while they were legalizing marijuana. A Dr. Shub recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. People on my street and people tied to them as the ones involved with the extended family members, like a Phil Collola with a whiting forensics with some sexual and medical offenders of kids. They have roles intercities and along routes, Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, with names along the Burlington Turnpike through time that have been influenced to plant evidences and try to fish for things to cover up what they have to cover up right now. When I'm speaking, you guys have to lie. I've been asking you guys for a long time, short words. Get them out to paper, one name and sequence. The Wethersfield Police, there's more violence involved. There are credible threats against the kids. I want a response to them. There are confessions more. Why would they hide this? Why would they give me no one to speak to? There's a Michael Emmett too, as one of the ones involved, putting fake things in databases, with the security at the schools, also with medical and sexual offenders of kids, with the family members of probate court judges tied to the same house involved with that, and people tied to them. They're not legitimately with the state corrections offices and the state judicial branch offices, with these people tied to, and as the ones named tomorrow, Collola, Oliveri, in other words, and Violet. I don't even know the girl. They tried to take a picture of me near a Violet girl. I don't know her at Elm Street years ago. There's something to do with their roles with the corner of Elm Street and Route 3 in Wethersfield and Rocky Hill, with a Mazzucato bakery and a modern pastry with a Mayano family, who's also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with others like the name Aiello and Demorals Market next to Hartford Hospital with his family, with a house there for him and for them. And there's also 3 spots at the end of the Burlington Turnpike Increasingly, people at 3 spots at the end of the prototype, like trying to act so others could take pictures, put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Increasingly, has collusions with people tied directly to this O'Brien family too, and his neighbors, and ones of the Collo family, with the false police reports with the police that are refusing to get on paper since I was a kid, and the courts speaking fake things in records as collusion/S, with all the names involved, but also with work criminal enterprise, private ones, and terrorists too. These are people involved, like with the name Collo and tomorrow, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people with the name Scalora, who knew my sorry friend, also with the name Demar, who knew my sorry friend dying before I knew her. These are people involved with home break-ins when I was in the area when I was a kid, and wire crimes of the police that show they have roles with it. They have whole wire crime acts and methods recorded. And these are names who have been colluding at and next to campuses and behind people's backs, putting fake things in databases. All the people will tell you this. The ones who were pretending other, it's recorded that they're lying. They're getting these are also how they confess. They use the right to lie while they're demonstrating their intelligence family, and with timed collusions with overt criminal enterprise, private ones not legitimately. Even if it's not related to a Demoro, an Aaron Mate. There's an Aaron Mate who looks just like the Joe Demoro, who's involved with the John Demoro and a Mr. Abruzzi, with kids and adults that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that they're involved with sexual medical offenders of kids. I never had a conversation with Mr. Abruzzi, excuse me. He tried to make a fake exception. That's a bunch of people that make fake exceptions are tied. They have ties to each other. And they had time collusions with federal evidences, crimes, and acting tied to it. Acting tied to predicate acts with facts, no. Like mail crimes, wire crimes. And one's criminally foreign influenced, like WFSB is refusing to fix the fake conversations with me, refusing to get me inter-branch onto paper. They have their own intelligence and inter-branch intelligence, and ones next to them they're demonstrating to me for some reason they would rather have that gone deeper and deeper into, and their conjunctions to the state judicial branch offices with it, for example. Then do mandated law properly. These are also people that painted themselves into corners, pretending to be about free speech. So they have to pretend, it's free speech because if you like it or not. Free speech means don't change mandated law. You guys are mandated not to change and fake what I say about the World Trade Center predicate acts and about the FBI Director Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their neighbors and their family members, increasingly involved with predicate acts at campuses, intercities, criminally foreign influence with a whole bunch of different countries. These are also people with the Scalora family involved with Mexico, people from Mexico and people from Canada, and people from the states near there, including a former Governor Malloy, is involved with main campuses, involved with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, with psychiatry, involved with the intelligence community, putting fake things in databases no one's looking into. Violet is also involved with that, with Maine, Canada, and the people from Mexico, and with UConn. And with the Hartford Hospital has a whole bunch of roles with UConn students involved with various natures of organized crime and criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, including with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Also with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones right next to Hartford Hospital. A bunch of names involved there. And just going by that, also had collusions at campuses, intercities. Like and like with the Demoro's Market used to be there. Tony Demoro also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with a Joe Demoro. They have roles with federal evidences, crimes with people named Collo and Kerr at the corner of South State Highway and Town Line Drive, and at the corner, which they didn't have a street sign up there till after I said it, and why they put it, it's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the people at the houses there that were lied to, like about me and about the people, them about themselves for federal evidences crimes. They have federal evidences crimes with a former Mayor Gold involved with people on Morgan Circle, involved also with military and Marines, involved with guns crimes with kids, and other sexual and medical crimes with kids, and judges and prosecutors, with people on Morgan Circle, and people in state police involved with the Eric Jensen and a Kerr family. And there's an officer, Jerry Miller, who's been planting evidences on all sides of my house with them, and with the family members of probate court judges involved with the same house, and they're intimatized with it. They have multiple boyfriends, girls. They're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. And these are people supposed to be speaking about hearsay, and allowing people to speak about hearsay legitimately, and where they're using the knowledge of good and evil to change and fake details, hide details, where regular voices can speak for things better than them. Because the names of the people, the sciences, are a certain type of victim / hyper victim. Forgiveness is to allow us to have forgiveness for you guys. That means follow mandate law and change and fake what we say. Many pray. Vaccines. So many people at Hartford Hospital have direct and indirect roles with the same house / S next to me, including people that years ago used to live here, involved with multiple police departments with them. Ones with the name D. Simone, also brought up by people at Hartford Hospital in their confessions and demonstrations of Newington police departments. A bunch of people with the name D. Simone involved with a Ray Colon and a Timothy O'Brien, with child abusers of kids, and using kids that weren't even in the same classes to further illusions. And they have something to do with various natures of wire crime acts and methods, including a childhood game called Phone. I think it was a Denise DeSimone. I never had a personal conversation with her. She sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. She has roles with the intelligence community. I didn't, and people that involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids. There's a Brendan D. Simone also involved with that, and with more with the principal upskirt nature. There was a picture on Twitter sent to me, and I couldn't get a response. Then they sold it to X, and I've been responding to X. They kicked me off or whatever. Let's block, trying to do your identity. Just get them on paper with the Wethersfield police. Can't go down there because they faked conversations with me that weren't at all there when I was a kid, and now I was an adult. And the kids who did go down there, they gave affidavits. They put me fake change ties to nature ties to them. I didn't even have a conversation. They put me in a car with a Chris Walters tied to a Ray Cololo, increasingly tied to child abusers, leaders of kids. This guy is saying immature too because he's involved with bringing up psychedelics and things like that because he has roles with a Rixian Faglione and a Brendan Leahy and a Brian Silver with some psychedelics crimes. And I never saw psychedelics with a Rixian Faglione. He never showed me sides. Right when I came home from his house, he asked me if I wanted to buy a tackle box for $20. Swear to God. So I gave him $20. There's connections between, plus just because they're connections, they're neighbors of his. There's a Richard Dombrowski and neighbors of his involved with wire crimes and acts with some judges and prosecutors who are involved with the doctors, foreign and domestic at Hartford Hospital, also with overt criminal enterprises, with medicines crimes and drugs crimes, and putting fake ties to kids. WFSB, they had to hide live progressions. So they used WFSB to pretend I had ties to doctors when I was a kid that weren't at all. These are people that were doctors' families that are putting fake things in databases with judges and prosecutors' family members, with people at and next to the state judicial branch offices, increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. Why are you considered with your YouTube advice, your YouTube videos, despite having should we change my content? I don't have the obligation to change I don't have the means to change my content. If you understand, I'm asking for, if you hear my words, I'm asking to get a fake conversation with me, who was in the World Trade Center, who was in right before the World Trade Center attack. I was in the Ninth Circuit Court as an observer. They attached me, the court it was proven afterwards, put a sequence shift from inside the court. They changed the date that the papers had been handed in timely to make them look appear as if they had been untimely handed in at the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack. And names on both sides of that case were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the people who attached everyone to fake conversations, intercities. Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut has like Harper Court's people and the Britain Superior Court people and District Court people who had collusions before the World Trade Center attack at West Hartford locations, New Britain locations, and town line locations with names intercities through time involved there, like with the Wethersfield Judicial Branch offices and corrections offices, and all along Route 175 from old Wethersfield founding locations are people that sought me out to demonstrate. They made both sides of issues to make, and me there to make it look a fake exception, because these are people that go before both sides of cases and the courts themselves putting the same sequence shifts and the news. These are people at the news locations. Increasingly, like a Kolvinskis family is involved with conjunctions to Route 175 and Central Connecticut State University with people from UConn involved at Hartford Hospital, involved with the identity theft, fraud, slanders, with families, with intelligence families that used to live in my area, and one still with the name Cologne, further involved with them, with various natures of organized crimes. And child abusers, leaders of the kids' first force roles, years apart too. And there are more then and now. Fake branches, bah! Let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. I'm not being heard because the intelligence community is changing and faking evidences. Mandated law, free speech means you don't change and fake. You guys are obligated to get the interbranch on paper. There's only 3 branches of government. When did they stop being, haven't been used remotely, criminally, forward influence, tactically, delusions, raw? There needs to have forgiveness for them, but we have to first liberate their minds. We have to heal their minds. They can't even get on paper, one name and sequence legitimately. They forced that principal child abuser and more involved at that campus then and now. Fake branches, pow. And I want the rest of them on paper. With Whiting Forensics is increasingly involved with intercities, with state police, involved with this Ray Claw, a whole bunch of people directly tied to him with state police at the corrections offices, with foreign and domestic military, and with the community center. The Admiral's planting federal evidences crimes at the community center with a Kevin Dillon. And with people next to Fox Connecticut News, Spirit God, get them on paper, one name and sequence. I want a response for the threats too. I want them to pick one name and sequence at the branch. And then we'll get to the other. At the same time, they had time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the terrorists, and the people interstates involved also with Washington, D.C. Has something to do with roles, with syntax of tied to 2 speech class teachers. I never had a personal conversation with them. They're increasingly involved with people all along Route 175 from the founding locations too. Involved also with Washington, D.C. in the World Trade Center with various natures of organized crimes and pretending other, while screening a breaching method and uses of that, which are maintained. In other words, even what was in my speech is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Them covering up their roles with Hartford Hospital and names next to it, with a Chris Walters, who wasn't even in my school, who was involved with 2 speech class teachers I have, with drugs and medicines crimes, with intelligence families next to Hartford Hospital, and people all along Route 175 involved with her syntax. I don't even know their names. My 2 speech class teachers in high school. They're involved with also, a Delafair family made confessions about roles with probate court judges and his family, and their roles with the Spada family with probate court judges involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with the names next to the Hartford Hospital through time, including the businesses, Tomorrow's Market, and Aiello's Kitchen, and their roles putting fake things and lies to my teachers distinctly, like my science teachers distinctly. From my speech class. See, the departments too. These are people at the departments at Central Connecticut State University involved with Detective Samuda, also involved with sexual and medical crimes against girls and war crimes with the FBI Director Robert Luskin and the court's family members that were planting evidences with the Dean Judd and other leaders of the kids, intercities with the ones next to the schools too. And murders and untimely deaths are involved. So it's not a game. I'm going to change. Well, and this is when we deal with the actual predicate act. You don't change it. Fake people say you guys are allowing that because you guys are allowing, criminally foreign influenced identities of the law and collusions with them. The corrections officers in the prisons have collusions with the same house/S. The more they no, let's get them on paper. That's a mandated law. Don't make people beg to get them on paper. There's violence involved. And I want a response from the principal child defender's confessions and what I recorded the Michael Emmett involved with. 6 things. Make sure they get on paper one name in sequence with writing forensics too. 6 things.